Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start the session now. Could we close the doors? Thank you. So thank you and welcome to this side event on financing energy efficiency, the opportunities, challenges, and perspectives from the G20 and localities. This event is co-hosted by the International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation with the Argentinian Network of Municipalities Against Climate Change. I'm Jurei, I'm Policy Advisor at IPEEC, and I will be moderating the session today. For those of you who may not know IPEEC, just to give you a brief overview, we are an intergovernmental partnership of 17 G20 economies dedicated exclusively to energy efficiency. We were founded in 2009 by the G8 as a platform where policymakers can come to exchange policy perspectives, but also engage in concrete technical cooperation in a number of sectors. Since 2014, we've also been mandated to coordinate the G20's energy efficiency activities, and we report back on that to the G20 every year. So now this afternoon, I'm delighted to be joined by a very distinguished panel of speakers from a range of backgrounds, from national governments to international organizations and climate finance funds, and to explore the issue of how to finance energy efficiency. For all of us here at COP23, this is an important issue, since energy efficiency can account for up to a third of the greenhouse gas emissions reductions we need to see by 2030 to reach the Paris climate goal. It's also cost-effective, sustainable, and accessible, and so is a win-win measure, but it's also one that is not as recognized as it should be. Right now, we don't see the level of energy efficiency deployment we need, and this is true of all countries. So the potential is there, but it's still just that, it's potential. To channel the multiple benefits of energy efficiency, which, as you may know, include economic growth, energy security, and improved health, as well as greenhouse gas emissions reductions, we need to significantly increase the rate of energy efficiency improvement in the world. And the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals call for a doubling of the rate of energy efficiency improvement by 2030, and this is supported by some figures from the International Energy Agency, which show that right now our annual rate of improvement is 1.8%, and this needs to go up immediately to 2.6 and be sustained until 2030 for us to really reach the full benefits of energy efficiency. So what all this implies is that we need to see an increase in the flow of capital towards energy efficiency, and this increase needs to be considerable at all levels and of all types. So that's what we're here to discuss today: how to collectively get to where we need to go, what opportunities there are to finance and support energy efficiency, and what role each stakeholder can play at the international, national, and local levels. And as we do so, we'll hear a range of perspectives on successful projects and business models, as well as financing opportunities and concrete illustrations of what different actors can do to contribute, whether it's through international collaboration, national and regional dialogue, or local action. So let us remember that energy efficiency is a resource we all have in common, but the approaches we take to deploy it have to be tailored and adapted to specific and often local conditions. So turning now to the agenda, this afternoon we'll start with a presentation on the G20 and the G20 Energy Efficiency Investment Toolkit, which will be followed by two presentations from Argentina on national actions and also municipal level activities to support energy efficiency deployment. We will then have a presentation by the Green Climate Fund, followed by a presentation on municipal level work in South Africa, and what can be done at the local level to unlock the potential of energy efficiency. So there have been slight modifications. We will jump in the afternoon straight to the presentation on South Africa, and then open the floor to you all for a Q&A session with our panelists. Before I move on, I'd also like to thank our partners, AOB Group from Morocco, who have put together this event with us and who have also published an energy efficiency magazine for COP23. They're by the door. Please grab one on your way out. It's a magazine that compiles various articles by energy efficiency experts, both from governments and international organizations. And the purpose is to really elevate the role energy efficiency has to play within climate change action and within the UNFCCC negotiations. So please do have a look on your way out. So I'm the first presenter as well. So without further ado, let me move on to the presentation. So I'll be presenting. So the G20 Energy Efficiency Investment Toolkit, which I'll be presenting on behalf of the G20 Energy Efficiency Finance Task Group, was launched in May this year at the G20. So the task group that put it together is co-led by the governments of France and Mexico. And the purpose of their work is to enhance the capital flows for energy efficiency investments in G20 economies. So as I mentioned just now, energy efficiency is really critical for climate change mitigation. As you can see on the slide here, by 2040, it can contribute to up to a third of the CO2 emissions reductions necessary for us to achieve a 2-degree pathway. But for us to get to this point, massive additional investments need to go into energy efficiency, of course, as well as into renewable energy, nuclear power, and other low-carbon technologies. But for energy efficiency in particular, this number needs to go up by at least a factor of 5, which is considerable. So the G20 Energy Efficiency Investment Toolkit was developed precisely to address and respond to this investment challenge for energy efficiency. It provides a number of voluntary options and insights into G20 members on what is required to get them to begin the market transformation for more energy efficiency investment. Why the G20, you may ask? This is actually intentional, also quite simple. The G20, as the group of the world's largest economies, also makes the base for the global market for energy efficiency investments, and so is a good starting point for the task group. And the key premise for the G20 Energy Efficiency Investment Toolkit is that no single stakeholder group can on its own achieve the necessary scale-up of energy efficiency investment. So this would require G20 policymakers, private sector, and public sector financial institutions to really come together and engage in a structured dialogue to identify the different policy gaps, as well as to jointly articulate how to deliver the many economic, social, and environmental benefits of energy efficiency. So the finance task group convened all these actors together in extended consultations to hear the lessons from them, their needs and recommendations, and to channel and integrate them into one resource, which is the toolkit. And it provides countries with a collection of tools, actions, best practices, and case studies to take up on a voluntary basis. So what I'd like to do is to walk you through the parts of the toolkit and to summarize some of the key recommendations. It is in fact made up of 3 different publications, which is a summary for policymakers, the main toolkit, and a booklet of case studies. And these are available for download on the IPEEC website, and I'm happy to pass the details on to you later. So the first section of the toolkit starts with an assessment of energy efficiency investments to set the scene. This was conducted with the International Energy Agency. So as you can see here, the global energy investment in 2015, a little over 15%, 10% only, excuse me, went into energy efficiency. So that's the orange slice on the lower left. This, of course, doesn't match up to what the important potential energy efficiency has to contribute towards climate change mitigation. And of course, this number needs to go up dramatically. When we take a closer look at investment by sector, we see that the majority sector, which includes the envelope or insulation, but also appliances, which accounts for the significant figure we have of 53%. Appliances actually only make up 6% of the investments, so there's a lot of potential for this to go up. In terms of trends, we see that the investment into buildings is mostly in the US, EU, and Japan. In emerging economies, we see that larger shares of investment into energy efficiency go into the sectors of industry and transport. So looking at these figures, I think it's pretty clear that energy efficiency investment needs to increase independent of source. And just as an aside, I'd like to distinguish here for the purposes of clarity, energy efficiency investment and energy efficiency finance. The financing is a mechanism or a means to an end to accelerate the growth of energy efficient business models and to enable the scale up of energy efficiency investments, but the two are quite distinct. So what do we do to increase investments into energy efficiency? Before we look at the solutions in the toolkit, we have to first address and understand the issue of the energy efficiency premium. What I mean by that is that right now, energy efficient equipment is often more expensive than standard and less efficient equipment. And the additional incremental cost you pay for energy efficiency on top of the base cost is what's called the energy efficiency premium. And while this premium is in place, you can imagine that there's not as much incentive for people to make the more expensive and efficient choice. So what we need to do is to make sure that this premium is reduced or taken down to zero. So in other words, what we need to do is to make sure that we bring down the cost of energy efficient equipment. So how do we get there? To do so, we need more stringent regulations on appliance standards, as well as other policy initiatives, such as building codes and certification schemes, so that the efficient choice becomes cheaper and easier to make than the inefficient one. This is where the G20 can really play an important role, and the toolkit outlines the different policy options and solutions for the different stakeholders, so policymakers, private and public financial institutions, on how this can be done. So moving on to these insights. So the first set of solutions in the toolkit are policy tools, or in other words, solutions for policymakers on how to address this issue. And the framework for the policy recommendations in the toolkit is provided by the G20 Energy Efficiency Investment Principles, which were developed by the Finance Task Group in 2015 through a highly consultative process with G20 countries as well as different financial institutions. And they were also welcomed by G20 energy ministers in 2015. So what these principles present are key elements for creating a supportive policy framework that would enable the scale-up of energy efficient investments. So just to outline quickly what they are, you can see them on the slide in front of you. They include such points as the importance of energy efficiency as a horizontal cross-cutting economic and developmental priority, that country-led measures and policies need to be stimulated to increase demand for energy efficiency investments, that we need to unlock the barriers that prevent the supply of finance for energy efficiency investments, and finally, that there needs to be more development of public and private sector capacity and commitments. So we go back to the previous slide. On the little graph, you can see the state of implementation of these principles in the various G20 countries that made up the body of the toolkit. And what we can see here is that these principles were assessed against the IEA policies and measures database to see what the state on the ground was in each of these countries, and to take stock of the status quo. And we saw that while principles 1 and 3 are roughly well implemented, the rest are not so well implemented. So for example, the principle 2 on the balanced approach to demand and supply side measures, and the last one on the development of awareness and capacity in private and public financial institutions show a big gap, so more work can really be done here. Moving now to the private sector tools. This section is based on insights from banks, from institutional investors and insurers, and is developed around the framework of 2 declarations that were signed by banks and by institutional investors. These are the bank declarations, the declarations of banks for the G20 and the G20 Energy Efficiency Investor Statement, which provide the similar type of framework as the principles for policymakers, but for a different set of stakeholders. So the task group engaged with these through these statements to determine what is needed to scale up energy efficiency investments and to gather the perspectives of these financial institutions. And we saw that the top 3 insights that they had to share to policymakers were that overall they see energy efficiency as an opportunity with a growing market potential, but they believe that more awareness is needed among the investor community, that more supportive policies are required, and also that better data to track the performance of energy efficiency assets is required as well. So just to zoom in a little bit on what the banks shared with us. They told us that, excuse me. They told us that the banks mainly were interested in opportunities in the commercial building sector and least of all in the non-energy intensive industry sector. They also shared that they had financing products in place that are tailored to energy efficiency, but more than 60% of banks that responded to a survey run by the task group with the United Nations Environment Programme Finance Initiative said that they have an energy efficiency credit or loan. Energy efficiency mortgages seem to be more a product that was developed in the United States, but they seem to also be finding their way to Europe. But despite all of this, a third of respondents said that they don't have a dedicated product, and only a small proportion of banks are currently tracking the energy performance of their assets, which is, of course, something that could significantly help increase the flow of finance into energy efficiency projects and should be done more widely. In addition, banks also highlighted a number of challenges that they're facing. Many said that they would like to see more policy developments and broader awareness raising, for instance, to help catalyze energy efficiency financing. That was an overwhelming response from about 72% of all banks that were surveyed. The other points that they highlighted and emphasized were the need for a strengthened energy efficiency standard and enforcement, increase of the priority of energy efficiency in public policy, and also that there needs to be more availability of energy efficiency data. Banks really saw this as something that national governments could play a role in creating an enabling environment for such data collections. So these conclusions were summarized and presented in the toolkit to policymakers as a way for them to integrate these considerations while they engage in their activities. So this is really creating a feedback loop. Now, just quickly moving on to the last pillar of the toolkit, which is public financial institutions. From October 2016, the task group engaged with public financial institutions together with a team of, the UNFI, the Finance Initiative, to develop a joint energy efficiency statement, which was signed by leading international financial institutions, as well as international organizations. And this statement really highlights the approaches that these institutions committed to implementing in order to promote and support energy efficiency across their investment portfolio and operations. So these are highlighted out on the slide in front of you. They cover a wide range of insights that these institutions had to share. For example, increasing policy-based lending to support the frameworks that promote energy efficiency and to drive the life cycle cost-optimal procurement of public buildings and infrastructure, increasing technical and project development assistance, for example, leveraging multiple retail distribution mechanisms, and also implementing integrated planning by recognizing the central role of energy efficiency for the mobility, the development of smart cities, smart grids, and infrastructures of the future. So there's a key role for public financial institutions to play as well. So here are some of the key messages. I think that we've covered most of them today. What I'd like to highlight is that, of course, the toolkit was developed with countries in mind, but a lot of the insights that it provides can be applied to different contexts. For example, the city level, which is apt for our discussion today. There are some examples in the case studies that show how pilot projects were launched to gather finance and investments into energy efficiency, and these can be consulted on our website, so I do encourage you to take a look. Let me stop here, and thank you for your attention. For the purposes of time, I'd like to pass the mic now to my other presenters, unless there's some pressing questions of clarification. In that case, thank you very much, and I would like to present our next speaker, who is Andrea Heins from the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Argentina, where she is Undersecretary for the Secretariat of Energy Planning. Andrea will be sharing with us some of the policies that Argentina is conducting right now to improve energy efficiency, and also some of the G20 priorities it will be focusing on next year. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jurei, for the presentation. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank also IPEEC and RAMCC for the invitation to present our energy efficiency national plan. Do you have the presenter? Okay. My presentation content is about our ministry's goals, energy efficiency, and the relation with climate change and the 2030 SDGs, how our energy efficiency initiatives are related with the energy efficiency leading program, that it was an initiative under the China G20 presidency, and the priorities for our presidency of G20 next year. Sorry, it's beginning in next 1st of December. Our minister's goals in the area of energy are two. The first of them is to ensure the energy supply for a growing country, and to do this, reducing the impact on the environment. As you know, when we work in on energy efficiency, we can support both objectives. Others energy areas can support both. Some of them support one, but energy efficiency as renewable are providing good results for both goals. In terms of figures, our objective for the 2030 scenario is to reduce an 11% regarding the business as usual scenario in terms of reducing consumption. But if we look at the energy efficiency as a source of energy, on the supply side, energy efficiency will involve the 12% of our energy matrix, our energy supply. The relation with the climate change and SDG, our energy efficiency plan is very aligned with both international and global initiatives. In the case of climate change, Argentina presented the revised NDC last year in Marrakesh, and the quite 30% of that NDC is related with energy efficiency initiatives in different sectors. As Jurei said, energy efficiency is in several sectors, is across measures. It's not like renewables or other energy sources. It's present in every sector that use energy. So our measures in the NDC are related with energy efficiency initiatives in transport, in industry, public sector, domestic appliances, buildings, and the energy sector itself. We do have to include energy efficiency measures in the energy production, energy generation, and all the energy sector also. And of course, we are aligned with the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. Also, we worked very close with other ministries. Our energy efficiency plan is not only the energy ministry plan. It's built with the other ministers related, transport, buildings, production ministries, and of course environmental and sustainable development ministry. But the question is, what are we doing to achieve that goals, the conceptual ones and the numbers goals, the figures? We have 3 pillars of action. We have one of them is to put the energy efficiency in a high level in the government, in the national government, to give energy efficiency the institutionalized that it needs, to develop different sectorial initiatives, because as the sectors are very different, the actors involved are very different, the instruments are very different, and we have to build tailor-made measures for each sector. And also we need a regulatory framework. But I am sure that the long-term results wouldn't be achieved if we don't work on formal education and community awareness. We have to include the energy efficiency and rational use of energy in the everyday living acts and everyday action of the people of our countries. And sorry, I think that this is the base to guarantee the results in the long term. From the institutional aspect, in December of 2015, it was created under the Secretary of Energy Efficiency and Savings. It was the first time that we have in Argentina an organization at national level with high level, like a high level organization. It's this undersecretary that I am leading. It depends from the Strategic Energy Planning Secretary inside the Energy Ministry, Energy and Mining Ministry. On the regulatory framework side, we are working with some specific bills in parliament process about prohibition of halogen lamps and also promotion of efficient water heaters that are very specific project. But we are also working on a national energy efficiency law. We are working in the not in the parliament yet, but we are working inside the ministry. We hope to take it into the parliament next year. And that project, that bill, it includes all the aspects that we think that we have to take in account to build a right regulatory framework. Also, we are working in the existing regulations, mainly they're related with the energy efficiency labeling and maps. This is the energy efficiency leading program that it was launched under the China presidency 2 years ago. Last year, in fact. And there you can see the different topics that are included in the energy efficiency leading program. It has some topics related with vehicles and transport, buildings, network devices, finance, industrial processes, electricity generation, appliances, technologies for the industry, district energy system, energy efficiency knowledge sharing framework, and end-use data and energy efficiency metrics. I showed you these topics because our plan, our energy efficiency national plan is aligned with most of the topics included in the leading energy efficiency leading program. We have different initiatives from vehicles and transport, for buildings and appliances, industrial processes, finance. In the point of finance, that we have the Argentinian Energy Efficiency Fund that is designed to give the small and medium enterprises some credits, some finance with a special rates, very low rate, in fact. And in this case, is inside the investment toolkit that Jurei told us. There you have some of the initiatives that we are developing in each of sector. I think that we don't have time to go in one by one, but I think that we can share the presentation after. And we also are working, as I told you, in appliances. In labeling, we have 24 labeling energy efficiency labeling standards. 8 of them are mandatory, and we have 4 maps, and we are working to put 2 maps more in the next month, and also 4 mandatory labeling more also in the next month. We are working in generating energy data. We have a lack of energy data, mainly on the end users side. That's why we are next week is starting the first national survey in domestic sector to know how the people use the energy inside their houses, and also to know what type of appliances and what type of buildings they have. And the objective of that initiative is to have enough information to build better policies in energy efficiency. Also, we are participating in a Latin American initiative that is BIEE, is an energy efficiency indicator base. This initiative is leading by CEPAL, the Latin American Commission for Economic Development, and we are also introducing some MRB protocols and methodology, and we are doing some pilots in this topic. These are some examples of our initiatives in education and communication and people awareness on energy efficiency. On the left side, you have some examples of guides that we have developed for education sector, for transport sector, industry, about electric motors, for and also for end users in domestic sector. It's the two ones at the in the lower part of the page. This year we trained more than 2,600 teachers from primary school. The idea is to give them not only contents but also materials to take to the class and to give to their pupils. And our aim there is to introduce the energy efficiency in the formal education in a formal way. Now we are working on some specific initiatives, but we think that the way is to train the teachers, and later on they will train the pupils. Also, we introduced and we work with several universities to introduce energy efficiency in the engineering and architecture careers, also in a mandatory way. And on the right side, you have some examples of our campaign about the use of energy. We think that we have to really, we started from, not for an energy efficiency message, we started below that because we want to realize the importance of the energy and the complexity to have energy in our homes. And this campaign was viewed by more than 34 million times any of the pieces. And last but not least, our priorities for G20 presidency. Our claim for next year will be energy transition towards more flexible, transparent and cleaner energy systems. And our priorities for the Energy Sustainability Working Group will be energy efficiency and renewable energies with a very focus on both. Energy transition towards more flexible and cleaner energy systems, mainly the transition based on natural gas point of view. The energy access for Latin American region, this will be our topic, taking account the condition from our region, that is Latin American and Caribbean. And another priority will be transparency on energy data and digitalization of energy markets. I think that's all. Thank you, and I'm here for your questions.
Thank you, Andrea, for that very clear presentation. I was glad to hear that you touched on a number of issues, including institutional support and awareness, which is, I think, something we'll be hearing during the rest of this event as well. So let me now move from the national level in Argentina to the local level and hand the floor to Gabriela Prata from the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. Gabriela, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jurei. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank the organizers of the event for inviting us to be, or inviting me to be here today. I'm here representing the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency, which I would like to explain right away that we are not focusing on our activity on Copenhagen. We are based there, but we reach out to the rest of the world, especially non-developed countries. we are part of the UNEP-DTU partnership. This means that our mother and our father are the UN Environment Programme and the Danish government through Danish Technical University and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency is also a sustainable energy for all hub for energy efficiency. So we promote a lot of our activities under the framework of the sustainable energy for all. Focusing a bit more on our main drivers, our main focus is accelerating energy efficiency through innovation in delivery models. We would like in our activities to raise the profile of energy efficiency and assist change in countries and cities. So we're really very much focusing at local level as mentioned before. The area where we move on, it's in between international energy agencies, energy efficiency agencies, like the IEA, IPEEC, which is organizing this event today, and World Energy Council, among others. We also are very much engaged with the private sector, so we focus very much our activities on delivery models that involve the private sector. Of course, we also have to engage with the finance community and development and commercial banks. But our main partner are the national and subnational governments. So the three main pillars of our activity is activating the knowledge base. So we try to help to understand what is the main picture in terms of energy efficiency at local level and where the opportunities are. We are also dedicating part of our activity to organizing training on energy efficiency too much directed to blue-collar type of jobs. So this is really focusing on the people that have to implement the energy efficiency projects on the ground. So we are talking about, for example, electricians, plumbers, roof insulators, wall insulators, this type of jobs. So we are really not only working on data collection and organizing the work, but also on training of the people that really have to implement projects on the ground. The other two pillars are focusing on developing public-private partnerships. So we are engaging, as I said before, very much with the private sector. And we are focusing on replicating and communicating success. So the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency is quite a young organization. It's like 5 years old. It's almost still a baby. But we are very much driven for upscaling and replication of concrete projects on the ground. Now I'm going to talk a bit more about our role in Argentina and of the work we are doing in Argentina. We are working with this network of municipalities, Argentinian municipalities, against climate change. This is a network of that gathers about 130 local governments, which is quite representative in the country. They are themselves a tool for coordination and support for policy implementation at the local level. And they also engage with other international organizations and municipalities to replicate good practices and so on. So it's in this context that we are developing our work in Argentina on energy efficiency together with this network of municipalities. So what are the main areas we are focusing on? We have organized our work into 4 main streams of work. The first one always focusing, well, the 4 of them always focusing on energy efficiency, of course. So we are organizing in these 4 main areas that you can see on the screen. So street lighting, public buildings, mobility, and district energy. And the members of the network are like choosing the areas from this menu, choosing the areas they would like to develop some work. What in real terms we provide them is some support on technical assistance, in technical assessment of the potential and the opportunities they can realize at their local level. Help them to develop feasibility studies for implementation of concrete projects and support on organizing public procurement. And this will serve as well for reaching out to financial institutions. Just moving further down on concrete projects, we are now working, assessing the potential for street lighting, in the case of street lighting, in 11 municipalities already in Argentina. This, if you know Argentina and if you know these municipalities, some of them are quite small and some of them are quite big. So the idea here is just to help them out and bundle the project together to give it scale and replicability. We have another 8 municipalities coming up. So when we have the data and the investment potential aggregated for all these 19 or 20 municipalities that first reach out, we believe it could start to be an interesting project to be financed. In the case of street lighting, we are engaging with the Energy Efficiency Accelerator for Lighting and Appliances, which is United for Efficiency. They are a public-private partnership which is led by the UN Environment Programme, which is based in Paris, and also engaging with private sector lighting companies like Philips and Osram and all the ones that you know. So we hope very soon to have the first data. This is all of this is a project that has started like 4 months ago. So we are still in the very beginning. Not very many results I have to show you today, but we are convinced that this is moving towards the right direction. Another area of work is energy efficiency in public buildings. We have gathered the interest from 13 municipalities, which are listed there. If we sum up all the inhabitants of these municipalities, it already represents about 1 million people, 1 million people that inhabit this group of municipalities, and we intend to work with them on improving administrative buildings, schools and sports centers, and hospitals. So this is a second stream of work. Regarding mobility, we are conscious that we also have to coordinate the efforts together with the public transportation. So we are supporting or designing our support of work with these municipalities around some other areas where the municipalities can help out, which would be, for example, car sharing and electric vehicles, other soft transportation modes and bike sharing, last mile urban logistics, for example, for cities with heavy traffic at certain hours, and of course city planning at local level, so putting pedestrians first, and all of this, as I mentioned, integrated with public transportation. Finally, district energy, and again another energy efficiency accelerator, as we call them, again another public-private partnership. The idea here, we gathered already interest from especially municipalities from the south of Argentina, perhaps with a more difficult weather than other parts. But the idea is to help them out on mapping local energy demand, to see where the demand is and if there's demand that could be supplied by such a solution. Developing project pre-feasibility and the business plan, and if it goes ahead, support with procurement. We are working in Argentina, and we believe this is our stream of work, which is hopefully successful. But we are doing this as well in other countries of the world. And we believe that we could organize our methodology according to several steps. First, we are gathering the interest from cities, towns, and villages. We have to focus on standardizing data. So it's very important that the data that we gather and organize and analyze, it's really reliable and standard data, so that we can develop pre-feasibility studies and bundle projects to make them easy and readable and interesting to financing and procurement organizations. And finally, investment and installation through training at local level. And with this, we hope to develop and contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. Just as a kind of conclusion, what are the challenges that we are facing regarding our work? We have identified, as mentioned before as well in previous speakers, sometimes the lack of local capacity, lack of trustable data, the need for designing bankable projects that really call the attention of the financing institutions, bridging the gap between the regulatory level and the ground level. So how can municipalities and small towns and big towns talk to the policy level, to the regulatory level, and help out through bottom-up approaches to engage with the objectives for energy efficiency. Nevertheless, we also believe that this is a long-term support that is needed to local authorities. This is not just one-off activity. We are here not talking about pilot projects, but really long-term support and really big projects that, if bundled, they can really make a difference. And communication and awareness raising is also mentioned before, and we also agree with this need, and standardization and transferability of projects and data and models and business models to develop our work. Just an example, there's a small brochure that we have recently developed for one of the big cities in Argentina, which is Rosario. You can find them, a few samples are back there at the table. If you want to grab a few, they are available in English and Spanish. So please feel free, and if you have any also any other comments, please feel free to come to me. And I just, as a summary, I don't know if it's going to work, but we have developed a small video. It's 1 minute video. If you, I don't know, how can we play this? Perhaps the back of the room can help out with this? No? No? Maybe the computer? No?
I think it's embedded in the presentation.
Yeah, you can, yeah, if you can press play. I'm sorry it's in Spanish, but perhaps, does it go? If it doesn't go, it doesn't matter. Okay. I pass it to the chairman.
Fortunately, we won't get to watch the video, but I'm sure it's available online, Gabriela?
Not yet.
Not yet, but coming soon then. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think we're starting to hear a consensus that there are some basic things that energy efficiency needs in terms of capacity building, data awareness. And I'd like to build on that now with the next presenter, Carolina Fuentes from the Green Climate Fund. Carolina is the secretary to the board of the GCF, and she'll be looking at the opportunities for energy efficiency of climate finance. Carolina, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also to the organizers and also to all the participants here for making the time to join this panel. And also thank you for the opportunity for the Green Climate Fund to explain our work and also how our mandate relates to the support of energy efficiency projects and programs. On that regard, I will start by informing on the mandate of the GCF and just providing a bit of background of where we come from. As many of you know, the GCF was created in the frame of one of these conferences, such as the one that we are attending now. It was the result of COP16, celebrated in Cancun, Mexico. And as an outcome, one of the big outcomes of the conference was the creation of an operating entity of the financial mechanism of the convention that could fulfill the needs of countries in terms of receiving the finance that they need to implement projects and programs to address climate change, specifically in the areas of mitigation and adaptation. With that a big mandate, the fund was established in 2010, and also a board was created to develop all the modalities, the business model of the fund, and as part of that, also the result areas that the fund will finance. As part of this work, 8 result areas were developed. We have 4 result areas for mitigation and 4 for adaptation. You can see them here. What I would like to bring to your attention is that 3 of the result areas of the GCF are closely related to energy efficiency, and those are energy access and power generation, low emission transport, and buildings, sittings, industries, and appliances. In all these 3, there are components that address directly energy efficiency. And just to give you an idea of the size of our portfolio, the information that we have as per the latest decisions taken by our board in terms of funding proposal approvals is that we have currently 2.65 billion approved in funding proposals for 54 projects. These projects span in different regions, and they address 73 countries. In terms of the portfolio composition, the breakdown that we have by region is also represented here. We have a wide coverage of all regions in the world, and in terms of windows, the fund aims to have a balanced allocation between mitigation and adaptation. Currently, we have 40% of the fund resources having been approved for mitigation projects, 29% for cross-cutting projects, and 31% are related to adaptation. In terms of the mitigation impacts of the portfolio of approved projects by the GCF, that is expected to deliver 1.04 billion tons of CO2 equivalent reductions. And in terms of the adaptation impacts, it is expected also to benefit 159 million beneficiaries. Now, with regards to energy efficiency projects, I would like just to inform very briefly on how the energy efficiency component is measured as part of the projects who are submitted to the GCF. What the GCF measures in the performance measurement frameworks are for projects to have reduced emissions from buildings, cities, industries, and appliances, but also we're focused as well in identifying the reduced emissions coming from an increased use of low emissions transport, and also coming from an increased access to clean energy and clean power generation. Here we have some examples of energy efficiency projects that have been supported by the GCF, and as you can see, also all these projects are wide-ranging. One of these projects is taking place in Mexico and other Latin American countries, and is implemented through the Inter-American Development Bank. This project uses a two-phase approach in terms of supporting energy efficiency. First of all, it provides loans to support energy efficiency projects, and once a sufficient amount of projects have been grouped, they are bundled to underpin the issuance of bonds, of green bonds. That is one of the first projects that was approved by the GCF. Also here we have a very interesting project in El Salvador, in which the GCF is providing a 20 million loan to Bandesal, that is the National Development Bank of El Salvador, and Bandesal is adding another 20 million from their own resources to create a credit line that is available to local banks to provide credits to local banks to support energy efficiency projects. These energy efficiency projects are supported by loans who are given at concessional rates, and the loans are to be repaid by the savings that are yielded through the energy efficiency projects. So this is a very interesting one that the GCF is financing. Another example is a project in Armenia. The accredited entity implementing the project is UNDP with UNFCCC with GCF resources, And in this one, the GCF will invest a 14 million loan to make energy efficiency loans for building retrofits more affordable in Armenia. And finally, another example is in Bosnia-Herzegovina. The country has a large stock of aging buildings with high energy consumption, and this energy is based on fossil fuels. And this project is intended to substitute coal and fuel oil by biomass, and also to retrofit the equipment in these buildings so they can be more energy efficient. And there is a total of 360 public buildings in Bosnia who are going to be benefited by this project. This is just to provide an example of the type of energy efficiency projects supported by the GCF. And just on a final note, to mention that the resources that the GCF is providing are focusing both in terms of the equipments that may promote energy efficiency, also the measures that may support energy efficiency in buildings, in appliances, in transport, in energy access, etc. But also, very importantly, most of these projects focus on the non-financial barriers that are a key component for the successful implementation of the projects. That is my presentation, and thank you very much for any comment or question. And also an invitation for you all to liaise with the national designated authorities of the countries in case there is interest in projects to be submitted. They are the ones that they identify projects that align with national priorities, and once they identify projects that they are keen in presenting to the GCF, an accredited entity is identified, so the projects can be presented to us. There is a review process, and finally a decision by our board, and that is the way in which resources can be made available for projects, including energy efficiency ones. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina. I certainly have a number of questions, but I'll keep those for the discussion later. Let me move now on to our final presenter for today, who is Katrin Harvey from the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Partnership. Katrin is the Senior Manager for Business Development at REEEP, and she will be presenting on a project that they're conducting in South Africa. Katrin, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and for giving us this opportunity to present our very specific project. I will be speaking about the climate change, clean energy and urban water project in South Africa, which we are implementing on behalf of the European Union and together with the UNIDO. And let me see if I can manage, yeah. First of all, I just gonna give you a very quick introduction to REEEP. It stands for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Partnership. And our main goal is accelerating market-based deployment of renewable energy and energy efficiency systems in low and middle-income countries. And our current focus regionally would be Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia and Southern Asia. The main goals for us is working towards universal access to energy, decreasing CO2 emissions, and increasing prosperity. We have a three-step approach that we apply with any project that we do. So one of them would be, so it's along the invest, learn, share spectrum. So we usually invest or support investments in clean energy solutions to accelerate the markets. We learn from our projects by applying a quite rigorous monitoring and evaluation system, so, combining different approaches that are out there into a more tailor-made system, and then we aim to share this kind of knowledge with a wider spectrum during the project implementation and of course afterwards as well. Now the project, just to give you a small idea of what we are dealing with, we're looking at 60% of the world's population who are living in urban areas by 2030. And most of that, like almost all of this expansion is expected to happen in the developing world. And cities itself account for about 60 to 80% of energy consumption, about 75% of carbon emissions. And this rapid urbanization is putting a lot of pressure on existing systems in those cities that are expanding so drastically, including water supplies, sewage, public health, etc. And now we have an estimation here of the African population growth to 1.2. Will grow to 1.24 million. Hang on. Never mind. One estimate will go to 1.24 million by 2025. I think it should be billion. 1,000 million, so it's a billion, sorry. I'm not good at math. All right, so we're looking at this particular project, we're looking at the city's role in decarbonization, looking at SDG 11, making cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And these cities can be quite a good testbed for energy efficiency gains and incubator for technical innovation. And I think one of the speakers today have already mentioned the Arena Cities report, where the Director General mentioned that we have to rethink the entire urban energy landscape, and combining renewable energy with energy efficiency will be the only way forward. In South Africa, as many of you might know, we are facing a pretty strong water scarcity, where the demand outstrips the supply nationally, and especially in the Western Cape, there's quite a lot of drought. And in the last 3 years, every time I went to the Western Cape, the dams were almost empty every single time. In South Africa especially, we have a very carbon-intensive electricity generation. Up to 95% comes from coal, energy production from coal. And the water and wastewater infrastructure account for up to 70% of the total energy consumed in the municipal administration. That is huge. And we have identified within our project that the cost-effective solutions exist, and they have reasonable payback periods, which is a tremendous scope, but the municipalities are having a hard time accessing this. And on the other hand, private sector companies are having a hard time getting to the municipalities. So there's a very big disconnect there. Now, as I mentioned, our project is funded by the EU, implemented by UNIDO, and executed by REEEP. And we are doing this, of course, with our local partners in South Africa. We promote energy efficiency and market-based deployment of clean energy in the municipal water sector. We we provide renewable energy and energy efficiency technical assistance to pilot municipalities. So what we did in the first year is we selected 2 very different municipalities that we are working with at the moment in this pilot project. And then with them, we link to existing capacity building activities in the countries. Like, for example, we're working with the National Clean Development Centers and the Energy Efficiency Demand-Side Management Fund that is already existing in South Africa. We are applying our monitoring and evaluation framework to capture the lessons that we learned throughout the project, to share them immediately. And we're working very closely with the South African government, especially with the Department of Environment and the municipalities and a wide range of other local stakeholders who could be interested in energy efficiency for the waterworks. And the main outcome for us would be a very strong replication opportunities throughout the country. So this is a pilot project, and we hope that by the end we have a pathway that can then be replicated all over. All right, so the objectives are basically catalyzing the market-based approaches to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions for the municipalities. We want to identify and assist de-risking pathways together with the stakeholders for cost-effective and sustainable deployment. We want to engage with the private sector and to crowd in commercial finance. We are working on capacity building activities and knowledge sharing among the policy and the private sector stakeholders. And we want to provide a basis for replication, and not only in South Africa, but also in the SADC region, and maybe even globally. I see potential in Argentina, actually. This capacity building works and this engagement with the local stakeholders starts right at the beginning, and we have roundtable events and workshops where we start looking at what could be such a model pathway that then can be shared along with others. We are looking at ways of identifying and accessing governmental funds that are already there that people are just not tapping into. And we are trying to bridge that link where we have the technology but nobody knows how to use it. I think we've heard this today as well. Where we are, my colleague who's doing this, my South African colleague gave me a nice example. He said, you buy the car, your car is actually could be quite efficient, and you get a manual that tells you where to hit the gas and how to turn the wheel. We come in and tell you how to drive it efficiently so you don't need so much fuel. So we come in and then we have these training sessions where we say you have to have enough pressure in your tires, you want to use the right kind of fuels, you don't want to go over the 2 RPM. I don't drive, so I hope I make sense. But this is what this is what the actual goal of the project would be, well, one of them at least. Yes, so there were certain things that have to be in place before we can go in and work with the municipalities. So for one of them, of course, is understanding the actual energy uses and requirements within the system. Again, something I think we've heard today already is coming up with the baselines, understanding what are the needs. And here we work, for example, again with the National Clean Development Center, where they performed our audits, which was the first time an audit was performed in a municipality. Usually such energy audits were only used in industrial settings. And then they come in, they do the audits, they understand what is needed, and then they stay there and they keep on mentoring the people who have to then apply the solutions that are recommended. Yes, I said we develop and build on the existing initiatives. We provide the feedback loops and the awareness for long-term viability. So we don't just come and helicopter in and tell everybody what we're doing. We're looking at what is happening already. We include energy efficiency best practices, manuals, and standard operating procedures that we develop together. And then we try to see how we can stimulate and enable a local market and help getting other people in to listen and see how the private sector can actually become involved. So one more time to the specific project interventions. So we do the technical support with the identifying the right kind of equipment that we could use, reducing the energy need, and looking at the actual infrastructure. So where can we tighten the screws? Where can we exchange the pipes? Where can we use better pumps? We do the capacity building on all levels. This means including making sure that the energy people in the municipality talk to the water people in the municipality, that we have the person who is doing the technical work, the blue-collar jobs, that they understand why they're doing it, that the desk officer who writes the procurement calls knows why they're calling for energy efficiency solutions, and then try to bring in even other people. Also, capacity building for the private sector. How can they work with the municipalities? In South Africa, we have very strict procurement rules, and private sector kind of shies away of going and working with the municipalities because of this. So there's also capacity building on that level, so that the private sector can write the right kind of proposals that then can be approved. And then, that's part of the market access, actually, where we see where the private sector can then come in and support. Hang on, I'm repeating. Oh, I'm going back, sorry. Wrong button. All right, so and then in conclusion, just a little wrap up. We are looking at identifying the energy efficiency opportunities along the entire water infrastructure value chain. So this is very specific to the municipalities, looking at the entire way from when the water treatment, water provision, clean water, everything, looking at where we can come in and what makes sense. We're breaking the silo thinking, which is where only the one person in what thinks about their own particular little point, and they don't think about the others, and there's no exchange along any kind of stakeholder in this. We're helping the municipalities source funding and crowding the private sector assistance and building public-private partnerships. There's a national fund for energy efficiency in South Africa, but the municipalities are not tapping into it, and this cannot be happening. So we are trying to help this as well. It's very clear that at this point it needs international or national support by donors. So this has to happen, and we cannot do by themselves. Most of these municipalities, the waterworks, are running at triple their operational their triple rate of their usual operations. So nobody has time to think about their energy savings. Nobody has time to strategize. So we need this support, financial support, to actually give people a breathing time and the thinking time to start working and improving their municipalities. This means we're not only, in this particular point, we're not only mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, we're saving money, and we're also providing better water, so it's an adaptation project as well. So the water services are improved for the municipalities and for the people. And then hopefully we develop this model pathway for replication across the region, so that with the 2 municipalities that we have, the pathways then can be adapted to all kinds of other municipalities, not only in South Africa, but all over the world eventually. And I hope I didn't go over my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrin, for that engaging deep dive into your project and also adding to the picture of what needs to happen, the challenges and opportunities at the local level. Our final speaker has heroically come from a different venue to join us today, James Alexander from C40 Cities, who is the Director of City Finance Program. He will be sharing with us an overview of what cities need to help finance energy efficiency. Thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me today. So, as you said, I've just come from another session, so I hope I don't repeat or go over some of the same things that were said. I did hear the last 2 presentations, and I'm sorry to have missed what sounds like a really interesting afternoon. But just to quickly introduce C40, we're a network of the biggest cities in the world. We have only 91 members across the world, and that might not sound like very much, but actually that's 15% of the world population, and even more staggeringly, a quarter of the world's economy happens in just 91 cities. So when those cities take action, when those cities do things, it has really big repercussions and really big impacts. And we've done a piece of work trying to understand the impact that those cities, that 91 cities will have on the Paris Agreement. And what we have done is take an analysis that identifies the global carbon budget for 2100 that will keep us in line with the Paris Agreement's 1.5 degree goal. And what we've done is we've taken a fair share of that and allocated it to those cities. And scarily enough, staggeringly, the 2100 budget for the C40 cities will be bust by 2025 if we don't take further action. Even more alarmingly, those 91 cities on a current business as usual scenario will use up the entire world's 2100 budget by 2060. So we need to take really radical action, and it won't surprise anyone here after the afternoon's discussions to learn that buildings are one of the really big areas of energy or of emissions in those cities, and something we really have to radically tackle if we're to move forward. What's exciting about that is that city mayors have got lots of powers to take action in lots of areas around climate change. So transport, energy efficiency, waste, planning, regulations to some extent, economic development, climate change adaptation, water. These are all areas that mayors have got responsibility over and where the authority to act lies with mayors. But there's a problem. And that problem is that much of the responsibilities do not come with any power to raise the finance necessary to actually have an impact on those responsibilities. So what we see is over the last 100 years or so, a massive devolution from nation states doing everything. That a lot of the power has been devolved, but with it has not come the financing. And that's where we need to go next. And that's the big challenge that we need to tackle if we are to see cities playing their reasonable, important role in delivering on the Paris Agreement. And the good thing is the mayors are really up for this. They really want to do things. They want to take action. But if we can make the finance flow, then we can start to see things really happening. And so in different parts of the world, of course, the finance challenges are different. In developed countries, in global North America, in Europe, in other parts of the world, there are challenges around the credit ratings and creditworthiness of cities in terms of keeping their high credit ratings. And so the rating agencies are saying you can't borrow anymore and keep the same rating that you have. That's one of the really big drivers of financial decision making in cities, particularly in North America. And so what we're thinking about is, well, why is all debt thought of as the same? Why is debt that relates to energy efficiency, where there'll be savings at the end of it, often regarded as being the same as raising debt for other things? And we want to see the rating agencies and the cities working together on this, and we're doing some work on this. There come even bigger challenges when we start looking at developing and emerging economies. Where the cities have, again, got similar powers to act, and often have even fewer powers to raise financing and to finance the infrastructure that's necessary. One of the really big challenges that we see there is the capacity of cities to take an idea or to take a proposal and turn it into something that people will invest in, that people can put their money behind. And it's that turning ideas into projects that's one of the really big challenges, and where if there's any major action that the world can take to support cities, it's helping add capacity and resource to prepare projects for investment. At C40 we have a program. There's a number of programs like this, but ours is called the C40 Cities Finance Facility. It's funded by the German government and the United States government. And this week we're looking forward to announcing another major funder into that program. And what that program does is it supports cities with technical advice and support to take an idea and turn it into a project, and actually get that project to the stage where somebody makes an investment. It's not about doing a study or having something that will sit on a shelf. It's actually getting the project to an investment. But at the same time, we're trying to build capacity in the city administration, and we're trying to make it so that in future we're not needed. We don't need to provide that same support because the administration has more of its own expertise, resource, and ability to do this themselves. And then beyond that, we're trying to capture everything that we learn and share it and disseminate it. And so in future COPs, we want to come back with lots of knowledge that we have and share that and get that knowledge out there. But the good news is, from this perspective of this panel, we're now going to be able to move into energy and energy efficiency with our new grant that we're bringing on board. And that's going to have a really major impact in what we're able to do. And so what we're looking forward to is working with a lot of cities to move forwards these projects. But there's another barrier, and it relates particularly to developing country cities, and it's the fact that development finance often cannot go directly into the cities where it can have the biggest impact. What we have is, talking about the kind of nations and the cities divide, we have development banks in particular that only work with national governments and will only lend to national governments. There are some notable exceptions to that, the French Development Agency, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, but on the whole, development finance goes to national governments. And what we need to find is ways to get development finance more directly going and flowing into green projects in our cities, where it can have really big impact and where it can make a huge difference. And that even actually applies to things like the Green Climate Fund. We want to see the Green Climate Fund working directly with cities, putting money into the city administrations that have the responsibility and powers to take action. And then finally, we want to see the private sector stepping up. And I think the way that we can do that is by demonstrating the huge scale of opportunity that exists in cities. There are certain banks out there that have understood that there are market opportunities in sustainable infrastructure in cities and are going really, making a great business supporting cities. But if we could find ways to get lots of different private sector finance organizations involved in sustainable infrastructure, then I think we'd start having that huge impact. So hopefully that's been a helpful contribution on cities and what they're doing, and looking forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Yes, indeed it has. What a series of presentations. We only have 4 minutes for questions, unfortunately, so I'd like to take the opportunity now to give the floor to all of you to see if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to address to our panelists. We have the microphone up here. If we can get somebody to help us around. Yes, so the gentleman and then the lady at the back. Oh, we have one over there. Thank you.
Well, I'm surprised. I'm Sigrid Benke. I'm working with the Regional Energy Efficiency Program in the Western Balkans, and focusing on performance contracting and supply contracting. I was surprised to hear all about this energy efficiency finance, and not one of you were mentioning this as an option. And it's booming in China, it's booming in other places. So is it an option for you, or is it not a topic?
I think it was that lady in the red over there.
I have one comment and two questions. One is that it's so refreshing to see majority women in a panel in a non-gender specific session. And then my first question has to do with the partnership with local governments. So in the initiatives that you've made, what steps have you taken in order to ensure that the initiatives can be insulated from local politics, especially, you know, for the projects to be protected from, let's say, interests around elections or even re-election of, you know, the partners in government? And then the second question, I'm not really sure how related it is, but maybe it's something that we can reflect on. Like when we have initiatives towards building sustainable cities, how do we also ensure that we are not creating inequities in the countryside? For example, if we're getting water and electricity directed towards city, how do we ensure that the countryside, where the source of all these natural resources, are also benefiting from the same resources and benefits? Thank you.
I think it was that.
Thank you very much. And I have a small clarification toward, I think, Carolina, about your presentation. You mentioned about the 1.04 billion tons of CO2 ton from the mitigation project that was funded by the GCF. And how much actually contributed from the energy efficiency project out of that? Thank you.
Thank you. I think in the interest of time, we'll take those three questions. We heard about a question on regional finance, on partnership with local governments, and one specifically to the GCF. Carolina, do you want to maybe start with that one?
Yes, certainly. On this specific number, I will need to come back with a breakdown, but that is very important. Something that is also very telling in terms of the interest and the proposals that we receive related to energy efficiency is that currently what we have in the pipeline in terms of the request for funding amounts to 18% of requests addressing energy efficiency in one way or the other. Some proposals address energy efficiently more directly, but some components are related to energy efficiency, and that 18% is very telling. That is in terms of the proposals that we receive for funding, those in the pipeline. I need to check in terms of the impacts, that impact on mitigation, how much energy efficiency is contributing to that one. And I'll get back. I would love getting your card. Thank you.
So on the question about how to make sure that there are no inequalities between the cities and the country, I think I'd like to give that one to Gabriela. I don't know if that's something you'd be willing to provide some clarification on.
Yeah, and can I take the chance to respond to the other ones as well?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Okay, regarding the business model, the question coming from the gentleman over there regarding ESCOs. In what concerns our work, it's really open. So there's no closed business model, and we really very much encourage that at local level, if there are and there is an ESCO solution, is certainly encouraged to put forward, and then yeah, who has to take decisions would take. Regarding inequalities and local politics, we really are engaging. In our case, in Argentina, we are engaging with an association of municipalities, 130. So I believe there is all sorts of political colors in there, and we are also starting to engage with the Argentinian government. So there's no really discrimination, and also we try to give the same opportunities to all. As I mentioned before, in our work we have very small municipalities and very big, so we try to include all the municipalities that are interested in developing energy efficiency. So that's it. I would like to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any of our panelists like to chime in? Katrin?
Yes, so first of all, I forgot to mention we are working with an ESCO in South Africa, so they are with us along the way as well, so they are helping the municipalities directly. The insulation from local politics, well, where we are, for our projects, we're working a lot with the actual people who won't be changing, so they stay. So it's usually the engineers and the administrative personnel. So we're not, of course, we have to tie in the decision makers all the time, and we have to work with them. But the actual capacity is then staying with the municipalities. And then for the ones where the two municipalities we're working with right now, one of them is relatively large and one is tiny. So one is very much up in the desert, very small population. So we on purpose chose that so that we could see how can we develop a pathway that can help both kinds of municipalities.
James, would you like to add anything?
Sure. I think on the inequalities piece is really interesting. There's huge inequalities just within cities themselves, and that's something that we're trying to help cities with as well, in terms of how inclusive can you make climate action, and how can you actually make it the opportunity of taking climate action to also be an opportunity to help make the city a more equal place. And we're doing quite a lot of thinking around that and quite a lot of work around that. And some of the good news is that there can be wider benefits from many of the projects. You can benefit the economy, you can benefit job creation, you can benefit equity and reduce emissions all from the same projects. But that doesn't solve your question, which is that there are rural and urban divides as well. But one of the biggest inequalities in reality is the fact that the poorest people are going to be the most affected by climate change, often which is caused by people living in the cities. So we have to tackle climate emissions in the cities, because otherwise everybody is going to feel the impacts, and often the worst hit will be the poorest people. And so there is that ongoing debate and dialogue, and I think it's very important to raise it as a point. Just in terms of the business models, cities are actively searching for successful business models, but models that work in their own circumstances. And I think where the capacity challenge that cities have comes in is looking at what's been successful somewhere else and trying to determine whether that is the right approach for them and for their particular circumstances. And the multitude of different ways and mechanisms by which a city could deliver a certain piece of infrastructure become almost bewildering when you reach a certain point of trying to think, okay, we need to nail down what we're going to do. And so that is the piece of support that cities need, is figuring out what the optimal business models are that are going to have the, eliminate or as far as possible mitigate risks, but also deliver in a way that provides good value for money the different solutions cities are trying to implement. But I think you're absolutely right that that's a key part of that.
Thank you all for your presentations, and you in the audience for all your questions. That's the end of our time. I think there seems to be a wide view that all stakeholders and all different levels of government need to work together. There needs to be more coordination between the local and the national, as well as with different sectors, the private sector, for example, and the on-the-ground implementers. So I think there's a lot of food for thought that we take back with us. Please join me in thanking our presenters, and I wish you all a good afternoon.